Yeah, no, maybe on that. What's these? No, please.
I don't know, my name is, yeah, no, my grandma. I don't know.
You might be too young to know what that is. You know. You don't know?
Yeah, she's already said it. Peterson.
Oh, you got her?
Yeah. Morning. I'd like to call to order this January 9th meeting of the Summer Protection Board. The first order of business is approval of last month's notes. Is there any discussion? Corrections, etc.?
I move to approve as submitted.
All those approve, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. First order of business is 420 Woodward Boulevard. Nick, you want to say a word or two about the trees on Woodward Boulevard?
From my memory, it was a proximity concern. I think one of them had a sustained a lightning strike.
Correct.
One of them has a galvanized that on the bottom.
Right.
That's the one we use for my neighbor. That's what started all this. He has to take it down. It's on the house. They've done. And the 4 people that live in that house, his wife, his daughter, and his son-in-law. And then there's the lightning strike one, and then there's the one that's actually in my house. Number one, I looked through the notes. over the weekend. I don't know how long the one down on there. I don't know.
Good.
Goes out.
Okay.
Just 2, 3 are my concern.
Any comments? Discussion?
Well, my recollection is, or what my notes show is that tree number 3, the one with the lightning strike, that did spiral a little bit, and it's possible that there's enough interior decay to make it a risk. And so I could warrant removal of that tree. But the one with the lean it's not actually a lean. It's growing that way. It's a phototropic bend. It's growing that way because that's the way the sun is. So it's not a lean, which means that it's uprooted from the ground.
You did.
I did see the knot, right. So what I would say is that I don't see a need to remove that tree. If you are concerned, then I might suggest that you get find a certified arborist to do some resistance testing or some sort of testing to see if that knot contains decay underneath it. I doubt that it does, or that if it's affecting the root system, and I doubt that that's the case as well.
I tried to call 2 last week. And can't get anybody
Pardon
to
me?
answer my phone. I tried to call 2 arborists last week.
Right.
I can't get anybody to answer my phone calls.
But that's what I would do. I don't see a need to remove that tree personally. So tree number 3 is the only one that I see that caused me any concern. And I don't have a great deal of concern about it, quite frankly, but I don't know about the rest of the board.
Yep, I kind of feel the same way. Tree number 3 with the lightning strike, I think it would probably be okay, but being close to the house, as close to the house as it is, I think it's probably enough concern there to kind of go ahead and warrant removing that tree.
So if I get an arborist and they come and say that it is decayed, do I have to wait a year to come back to you?
No, all you would need, well, the chairman can answer, but no, you would just apply for another permit to remove that tree. And then we would come back out and look at it. And what what the board would like to see from that arborist is just something in writing that says that structurally it presents enough of a risk that it should be removed.
And there are tests that he can run that we can't standing.
Like me with asphalt. My expertise is in asphalt. So.
Yes, we can fashion a motion that approves removal of the tree with the lightning strike and have it, and removal of tree number 3 contingent upon an arborist seeing that there is root rot or some other threat to the existence of the tree.
So lightning and forest.
Then 4 is the one I speak of. I'm sorry.
Three's the lightning.
That's
In front of me.
That's fine. Get the arborist to come.
Yes, and as far as the lean, I wanted to make some remark about the lean. Again, it's a phototropic lean. It's not something that's the roots are pulling out of the ground and it got half blown over. And that would be a real threat for that to reach your neighbor. It would have to break that the entire tree, and so I think it's sure to have be warned of the liability of the tree in you, for that tree in your yard upon it.
I mean, I don't want anybody to die. That's just ridiculous. That's my prior concern. I hate cutting trees down. I despise cutting trees down,
Yeah.
but sometimes you need to do it. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't gonna fall on his house. Because there's a lot of people there and I actually like my neighbors. So.
Oh, that's important too, yes. Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yep. So I move to approve the removal of tree number 4.
No, three.
Excuse me, the one with the lightning strike, number 3. Sorry, to approve the removal of tree number 3. And we would reconsider removal of tree number 4 with an appropriate report from a certified arborist.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our first new business is 155 Droves Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Roberts for the
Yes.
development team. First off, I'd like to say we really appreciate the input from when you all met us last week, and I'm extremely proud of Patrick, who's my director of development, the group, Marie and George and Wade from Outdoor Spatial Designs, our landscape architects, and Trey Linton, our principal civil engineer from Forsberg Engineering. Again, the collaboration and meeting at the site really stimulated some thoughts for us on additional tree preservation, and we worked mightily for a few days and noses to grindstones and came up what we think is a very carefully reconsidered plan that incorporates more based on the request, and we really worked hard to preserve additional trees. To give you a little context on the site itself, it is a pretty cool site, which is being designed as sort of price approachable housing for sale for the missing middle, designed in complete conformity to Somerville's UDO with rear entry garages and lanes and walkability and things of that nature. And we really appreciate it. We spent the time working on the green space and again, saving more trees. And just as an aside, holistically, one of the board members is very familiar with what we do for multiple decades, and we really care about it, spend the time and the resources with top-notch professionals in consideration. And even this project, because the county had promised the sewer access to the 8 African-American families that live on Droz, and the county, of course, can't give them the sewer access for 30 years. So we're reconfiguring outward tie-in to the back of our site to give them as sort of a civic responsibility, the ability to tie in their sewer and get rid of their septics.
Excellent.
So we're very happy. But again, I really appreciate the collaboration together in a public-private type of partnership and working environment. And I think it produced a better project. And I'd like to just introduce Patrick Head, my director of development. And there we go. Thank you.
Okay. Again, thank you all for meeting with us last Wednesday.
Wednesday.
The blur. Do you have this drawing that I sent?
We have all the drawings that were in
Okay.
in the.
Yeah.
'Cause I have enough copies if you need it, but the high, that's first file was the high. So I'll just quickly go over this and then I'll let the design professionals discuss what changes were made. But this sheet shows generally in the green, the trees that we were originally planning to save. And again, as we walk the site, there's a lot of pine trees in the middle, but there are some hardwoods around the perimeter. After reviewing on site with George, the arborist from Outdoor Spatial Design, and also reviewing with Trey and the engineering team of what trees could stay based on drainage and roadway construction. We sort of found these pockets, mostly around the perimeter, and then in this central green space, around the pool and clubhouse building, and then try to preserve some of that lawn that we discussed last week, but still allow, kind of to nestle it around with trees remaining, leaf trees remaining. And then as part of our landscape plan, which was also to bring in new trees to fill in sort of a lower canopy. A lot of these pine trees are very tall. So you have the big height, then we'll have some lower story trees. So I'd like to introduce George from Outdoor Spatial Design to just kind of go over his thoughts on the trees as he walked it with me, and then Marie can kind of explain the
Just quickly before you leave, Patrick, I wanted to, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the time you spent and for initiating what has happened in this remarkably favorable change that we see here. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to collaborate. I think collaboration always helps.
You're right.
It did.
You're right.
Thanks, Patrick. As Patrick mentioned, my name is George Schneidmuller. I'm a landscape architect at OSD, and I'm also a ISA arborist. So I'd like to, kind of in general, there's a lot of trees on this site. But I'd like to kind of talk about 3 different areas where Patrick and I analyzed trees last week. So starting at Droz Road on the top left corner of the sheet, there's a number of pine trees in that area that we thought could stay. So again, the trees in yellow previously were marked for removal, but now we'll be retaining those. So the reason a lot of those pine trees can stay is that they are upright. They're not a danger to Droz Road or the proposed townhomes. There are a few oak trees that I provided pictures for in the report where they have significant lean. I think more than phototropism, but actually kind of hazardous lean towards the townhomes. So while I'd love to keep some of those big oaks, unfortunately with that hazard, the oaks are coming out, but I think all the pine trees will be a nice amenity to keep and have some canopy, the little bit of shade that pine trees do provide. Moving down along the western property line, there are some large oak trees in that area, particularly that first cluster. There's 1 or 2 lower kind of outright branches that will need to come off, but I mean, it might be 5 or 10% of the percentage of the whole canopy of the tree. So we thought that those trees would be great to keep as well. There were a couple pines, gums in that second pocket as you move south. They weren't beautiful trees, but you know, any trees that we could keep that weren't a hazard, we thought would help with just kind of the maturity of the site. The drive line does become close to the property line as we move south, and there's just some pine trees, you know, that aren't in great shape there. But as we get to that back corner, there are some large, healthy trees that are remaining, oak trees, gum trees, and then kind of as we move to the right along that property line, we reconfigured some of those parking spots so that we could keep additional trees. Those include oaks, pines, and gums. And then the last area that we looked at was towards the center of the site. Almost all of these trees are very tall, skinny pines. There aren't any great, you know, grand oak trees, unfortunately, that we would want to save or highlight. But we did think that, you know, a large area of pine trees does add to the maturity of the site. A lot of those trees that we're taking out, we want to make kind of more into park-like environments, which we thought would be more appropriate with adding oak trees. But in the pockets where the yellow pine trees remain, they're kind of like more natural areas, and we thought having some of those would just help, you know, make the site look a little bit more mature and not clear cut with new trees in the center. So that was it as far as the arborist evaluation goes. And I think Marie would like to talk a little bit about some of the site elements as well.
Looking to the landscape plan. And I'll real quickly just kind of go over, since we're talking about removal, what we're going to put back, you know, and kind of the characteristic of what we want this overall project to look like. So what you're looking at here is just a conceptual rendering of the landscape plan. The lighter circle tree symbols are the size and location of what we are proposing to save. The darker trees shown on this plan are what we are proposing to add. So we will be adding canopy trees, you know, for a nice streetscape as you drive and walk throughout this community. Where we are able to, underneath the pines, we'd like to add some understory to kind of bridge the gap between the tall canopy of the pines and some visual interest, add to the park-like elements that we have, you know, and just really sort of give a nice sort of aesthetic level, you know, as you're driving through. You've got different size canopies, different color canopies, different heights, those types of things. So we're really studying what will remain, and then sort of what the use of those amenity areas will be, kind of the character of the streetscape, So the community will have, even though we've got real fun pockets of different areas for the residents to use, we'll have a cohesive landscape, that sort of bridges what we're going to keep, versus what we're going to plant. And then we also provided, just kind of as we're starting to think about the design, we've got another page, I think it might be after this, just some things that were, oh, same file, yeah, maybe the second page. But just as we're starting to look at this, getting y'all's initial feedback on what we're proposing, to use sort of throughout the property. Or obviously add to this, probably take some things away, but this is sort of what we're proposing.
Okay.
So, and with that, I'd like to introduce Trey. Trey can kind of talk about, all the civil, how to make it work.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Just on the proposed trees in the landscape, how many of those are going to be canopy trees? Just any idea at all of those numbers?
So we have 159 at 3 inches shown on this
Mhm.
conceptual plan.
Right.
3.5 inches. It could be whatever, if we need to do a little bit higher. That's what kind of our loose drawing is showing that we have allocated
Okay.
space. And then maybe, I don't know, just looking at this, maybe 25, 30 understory, just kind of a guesstimate.
Right.
But as we hardline it, we'll get some more.
Okay.
But, I would say at least 100.
Yeah.
Probably more.
Okay, good.
Great. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Also, when you're talking about the pines and what they offer and that they are so high. And I know this, I'm not talking about trees right now, but planting azaleas in and around the pine trees is a good thing. The azaleas and pine trees cohabit very nicely. The azaleas appreciate the shade of the pine trees. Also, the pine trees can bring a acidic condition, and that's also good for the azaleas. And we are, Somerville is blessed with a lot of azaleas, so you'd be right on track to plant azaleas around and close to these pine trees that they would cohabit nicely.
Well, next plan you see, we'll have azaleas underneath.
Okay. But yeah, I'd even approve the azaleas over some of the understory trees, just because we live in Somerville and
Sure.
this is a very popular plant to have everywhere.
Great, okay. Thank you for the feedback.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Hold on, guys, let me just write my notes. Okay, great. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trey.
Good morning. I'm Trey Litton with Forsberg Engineering. I think Patrick and Marie kind of covered the changes that we made. I'd just like to reiterate, we appreciate the collaboration and the feedback that y'all provided us last week. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all may have related to storm drainage or the civil site. But other than that, I have nothing further to add.
I would like to simply say thank you for, it probably was difficult in unearthing some of these interior areas that were not going to be subject to issues because of drainage, stormwater, et cetera. So they were in there, but you had to do some looking, and we appreciate that.
Of course, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion?
Yep, I have a question. For the arborist or for someone, is there a mitigation plan for after the tree removal or after construction to restore the soil compaction and all that sort of thing? Is that something you've considered? Well, let me follow up and ask the question. Have you determined yet how you're going to remove those? Let me back up just a moment and say, I too commend you heartily for really looking at this and being so objective and saving all the trees that you've done. You did a terrific job, and it's a good team, and I think this is a wonderful plan. So major kudos to everybody on the design team. But back to my question, because of necessarily for the construction, you're still going to be removing about 700 trees. And so my question is, with those pines, especially the tall pines, do you plan to log them? Is that the way you're going to remove them, or are you going to, as an arborist, going to cut them down and dig the stumps? Have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I think with a large amount of pines like this and the level of construction and kinds of equipment that they're going to have in there, typically, whether they use the pines for logs, I'm not sure. We can ask the team. But what I usually see is that they cut them close to chest height and they leave a stump so that an excavator can come in. And it makes it a lot easier to get the root mass out if you have a short stump to kind of rip out. That does take some dirt with it typically. So what we would look to do to kind of make sure that the soils are still good is come in with some solid fill dirt, test that fill dirt, figure out what the pH and nutrients are, and if that's acceptable for us to plant in. And if not, we always like to bring in soil amendments and treat the soil. So as far as like if we're using the pines as logs, I'm not sure, but I think that's probably kind of the removal soil amendment strategy.
Well, it was probably as much the concept of, if anyone's familiar with logging, it's very effective, but it can be, pretty disruptive. And so it results in, well, some soil compaction, rutting and all the rest of the things, which you will fix because you're there, you own this and you're going to fix this. But that is a concern, and providing adequate growing media is also super, that a lot of people don't do that, unless they're actually forced to. Another consideration along with that, though, would be protection of the adjacent trees that are to be saved with equipment travel.
Yeah.
Because, you can fix the wall if it's broken, but you can't do a lot for the trees that are going to be staying there if root compaction, et cetera, occurs. So that's another concern that we would have if you have a plan, barricades, whatever. I mean, the town has specific requirements for that, but we just wanted to reiterate, since there's a lot of work going on in there and there's a lot of trees being saved. And it's a pretty busy operation.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, in this drawing, you can see that there's tree barricades in the highlighted areas. So all the trees to save will have tree barricades up the duration of the project. And then we had actually spoken about this with the previous town arborist, but there's some areas where there's trees that are close together and a tree needs to come out for whatever reason, a disease or something. Our arborist will be on site to direct, the tree company on the removal. It won't be pulled down with a track hoe or something like that.
Right, we saw that and you mentioned that too, right?
Not
a good
Yeah,
one.
we'll be very careful with the trees to remain. And the soils, just to add to what George said, a lot of that topsoil where the buildings are will come out because it needs to be removed for compact engineered soil for the buildings. But anywhere that we have plantings, we will mostly the soil will remain, and we'll fill it with new clean dirt and make sure it's suitable for growth.
Unless the soil removed for the building site, there might be some pretty decent soil on site.
There actually is some pretty decent.
I figured it.
China and Terraconas are geotechnical engineers on it and have studied it. We have some pretty good soils. Nothing has, this is sort of virgin.
Right.
Land, nothing has been built on it, and we'll be very, very careful on managing to retain existing soils and be very careful with the input.
Okay.
So Terracon is certainly supervising the geotech, and their seasoned national outfit. They're a go-to geotech engineer, and they'll also be working hand in glove with the arborist.
Well, that's key that your geotech firms are working hand in hand with the arborist, because whether you log this, some folks log these to take advantage of the money they can get from the tall straight pine trees. But whether you log it or whether you remove them and you cut them down and then pull it out with a backhoe, you're going to significantly compact the soil. And so that's why this is a great project and I would hate to see all your good efforts go to waste by not mitigating properly after the tree removal and after the construction, mitigating any soils that might have gotten severely compacted, because once you remove those trees and you roll that backhoe over it, it may very well become much like the wetland, adjacent it, because you all have been to construction sites, I know, and they can become mucky messes. And the trackhoe or logging equipment, whatever, is going to significantly compress that soil. So I certainly approve this project. I think it's a great project, but I'm going to want to be sure that there's a mitigation plan that's approved, reviewed by and approved by the town arborist to going forward. So I just think that's important. It's something your arborist can draw up. There's lots of documents to guide.
I was also concerned about the fencing that you might provide around the trees that are to be saved. Too many times, and I don't mean you, too many times that fencing is inadequate and that is too close. It needs to be out further, as into the drip line. And too many times that has not happened with other groups. So it makes me, I don't know, aware of this and want to protect. After all, we are a tree protection board.
Understood.
And we want to protect those trees that are being saved. So I just want to bring that up, that we want it protected.
And to give the board some additional comfort, as you can see from the ability to revise this plan very collaboratively. We have a team which is used to working all together. We don't let the site contractors run amok, all the professionals from Terracom to trade, for spatial designs and everything. We're very engaged with the project and every project we do historically, and don't let the site contractor run amok. Everyone is extremely well supervised, and all the engineers and design professionals. We all talk and work together as a team, as you could sort of see. So the beauty is also good communication amongst all team members, so there's not one misbehavior.
Communication is key.
We do this stuff the right way, and we supervise it from the top down and how they team that all these professionals have been working together with us for a long period of time.
Thank you.
Further feathers flock together, as they say.
Yes.
Any more comments or discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the project as submitted with the stipulation that a mitigation plan is submitted to the town arborist for approval and coordination.
Second.
Motion second. Any more discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Again, thank you all.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Very much. You.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
effort.
You're very good.
Thanks, Patrick.
It's appreciated.
a great day. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is 101 Toohey Drive. Towhee Drive, excuse me. Nobody here to represent that? Nick, could you take a minute and describe the tree at Towhee Drive?
And put the picture up.
Is a large, seemingly healthy pine, for proximity concerns. I think there is some slight mechanical damage to the base. There was recently a water removed, an adjacent water removed at the root zone, which may or may not have an effect on the roots. But most likely.
All right, thank you.
Do you have a picture of that tree?
I'm trying to pull up what we have.
Nick, also the water oak, that's the tree that was removed.
Yes.
How big was the water oak that was removed? How big was
I
it?
wasn't able to pull up a record on
Okay.
it. It wasn't approved. I haven't.
Right, I just didn't know how much disturbance around the root system.
I do, but I do not remember the exact location of it. It was somewhere close, but that's been 2 or 3 years ago. But
We gotta get this document out. Yeah, there we go. There we go. It was just under 10 feet from the brick wall, as I recall. Is that the only picture?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Their concern was that it was the proximity to the home, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I think it does have a little bit of a phototrophy. There's no root color there. So I don't think it's wind. I think it's just a phototrophy. This is the mechanical damage right there. It's very slight. It seems to be compartmentalizing properly with the
If they're concerned about it being close to their home, they could consider root pruning at the base of the foundation of the home that would prevent any possible destruction to the foundation. And and obviously, according to what we can see, has not occurred yet, and that's good. And it might be a good time to do some preventive maintenance.
any other thoughts?
I didn't find any reason to remove that tree. I mean, it's not endangering the home yet. I didn't find any significant decay around that, around the wound at the base. So I don't see any need to remove the tree.
I agree.
David?
healthy tree. Can't find anything wrong with it.
Can I have a motion?
I'd like to move that we deny the removal of this tree.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next order of business is 122, and I don't know whether I'm pronouncing this right, Caleb Court? Caleb.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hayward Preacher, homeowner for 122 Caleb Court. Our application was prompted by a tree that fell down during Hurricane Ian. And on the drawing that I submitted, that is marked at the back of the property. That was a healthy 13-inch pine that snapped off in the hurricane. Fortunately, it did not damage anything when it fell. That has created a concern that even the healthy trees pose a threat, and that was the reason for our application. Because we have, as you can see in this picture, the closest tree on the left there is the one closest to the house, number 3 in my submission. And that has a slight lean towards the house. And that is a concern in terms of falling into the house, and that's our bedroom right there on that part of the house. So this was the collapse of an otherwise healthy tree is what had prompted us to apply for permits to remove trees.
Well, we were all there. We saw the trees.
Thank you for coming out and visiting.
Well, that's our responsibility when you request it. We did, go ahead.
I was going to ask about the tree that did fall in the back of the property during Hurricane Ian, you said?
Yes, sir.
it snapped off. I mean, so it didn't fall down, the roots didn't uproot or anything like that. It's just
They
snapped
did
off
not.
some.
It snapped off about 12 feet above ground level.
Okay, all right. And was there any kind of injury to the tree before it snapped off? Was
No,
there any
sir.
kind of sign of any kind of issues with the trunk at all?
No signs of any sort.
Mhm.
In fact, my neighbor and I cut the tree up and the root, the root that remained was oozing sap. So it was very alive. It was completely full of the natural sap. There was no indication of bugs. There was no indication of splits higher up in the tree or any kind of infestation. So an otherwise apparently completely healthy tree just snapped off. And as we know, Hurricane Ian, when it came through here, was a relatively minor event, since the eye of that storm actually went in closer to Georgetown than coming up the peninsula.
It's hard to know why that one tree out of this collection.
And it was sort of in the middle there, and that is a complete mystery to me.
Yeah,
None of the other trees, none of my neighbor's trees fell during that. And the fact that it snapped off above the ground, and you're right, it did not heave the root up out of the ground, even though we had experienced a lot of rain and the soil was quite saturated at the time. But just appeared to be random chance that came to. We didn't even realize it until our neighbor called and said, "It looks like there's a tree down in your backyard." And fortunately, it was far enough back, it did not hit our house, nor did it hit our neighbor's house.
that's good.
And was it growing next to that tree in the background? Is that where it was? Those two trees were close together, right?
Yes,
The one
sir.
that
And the
fell?
other tree, it was unaffected.
Yeah, one thing I did notice out there is the butt was decayed on the tree that fell, when the one next to it,
Oh, it is.
at a bad
Okay.
spot. Yeah,
That would have been at the back edge of the property line. And behind that, that area was cleared as drainage for the community. So there would have
Right.
been heavy equipment back there behind it during the development phase
Yeah.
for Cambridge Park.
Yeah. Nick, can you zoom in on that tree in the back center, just right down?
Quality isn't great. but
Yeah, it's not,
higher grade.
it's blurred.
You can see the logs left from the tree that fell that we cut. That is adjacent to the one you're looking at there.
I'm curious, I'm Kathy Preacher, the other homeowner.
Mhm.
The tree that you're pointing out, sir, are you saying that one's not?
My recollection is the tree that looks like it fell. I think they were both growing maybe side by side,
Fairly
Yeah.
close, yes.
and there was some decay. Yeah, there was some decay in the wood.
Of the tree that fell.
Down in the base of it.
But not this one here that it's pointing
I
out.
I don't recall.
Okay. So that spot doesn't mean anything. Negative.
You know, I guess when we look at these trees, you know, we look for trees that are diseased, dying, or really a major safety issue. And, you know, the pines for the most part, I think there were some that were graded kind of low. They look to be good shape to me, and I just don't see a reason we need to remove them at this time. I would certainly continue to monitor those trees. But the trees number 2 and I believe number 5, those probably need a little bit more discussion from the board and see if there's something that we feel like allow those to be removed.
I think it's 1 and 5.
Was it 1 and 5?
Yeah, but we need to get the numbers. We need to,
Right. Number 1 is apparently, now, I had put that on there principally because there's a codependency up at the top of the tree. And that concerned me somewhat. And tree number 5, I put on there because it's always just kind of look weird. I don't have a better description because I'm not a trained arborist, but it had a number of dead limbs fairly low. And it has put out a number of suckers way down low on the tree, as you can see in that
Yeah,
picture.
that's typical of palm pine.
But when
do
Nick
that.
came out,
That's the point,
he said
right.
number 5 was stress.
Yeah, that's number 5.
Well, it has that appearance because it was making such low shoots, but often pond pine will do that depending on.
That's not.
Oh, it is.
For that
I am
species.
not familiar with pond. I take their expertise.
You gotta go to a place where they live and see what, it's a different animal, man. I'd like to say something about the tree, unfortunately, that is closest to the house. And it's still a fair distance. We all live with the fear of shaved trees, seared trees. Were you here for Hurricane Hugo by any chance?
No,
Okay,
I was not. I
Well-
know that Hugo wiped out a lot of
Yeah.
the oak trees around the parade ground at the Citadel at my alma mater.
oh, yeah.
There's a picture of that.
Well, pine trees snap above ground. Sometimes it was much higher than that for Hugo. It was just a uniform kind of thing. And it was a random act. If there was something wrong with the tree in the back, that's another issue. The one that did break. However, the tree on the left in the drawing here is probably the finest tree on the property. It has the greatest taper, implying its greatest strength and resistance to stress. As Claude was just saying, it's hard to find a reason to take it down. Yes, any tree can be a hazard. If we were to entertain all trees that were hazards in terms of their proximity to the house, despite their health, we have very many fewer trees here. And it's a difficult dance, if you will. But I hope you understand our position that it's difficult to just summarily say this tree is a potential harm. It has a target, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with the tree. We hear this very much, and I understand it. I was here for Hugo. You know, I want to cry, but that's the way it was. It's a rare event. I encourage discussion about the other 2 trees that Claude mentioned, but I would have great difficulty in approving that tree on the left of there. I guess that's tree number
Number 3.
3. Any other?
Well, I agree with what's been said so far. I could approve the removal of trees 1 and 5. Just because of their structure but having said that, since I agree with you that number 3 should not be removed. If number 5 were to fall toward the house, number 3 is going to stop it from hitting the house. So, and that's just, because of its structure, I would approve its removal. But the property owners may want to think that it may not need to come out, because if it falls, it's going to, number 3 is going to stop it from hitting the house. But I would vote to approve 1 and 5.
Any other comment?
Before you make a motion, I have 1 or 2 questions.
Good.
One is about on tree number 3. If we're going to keep that, do I need to apply for pruning? If I have an arborist, like take off the branch that's helping to lean it towards the house. There's a fairly large branch on that side directly towards the house. Does that require separate approval, or is that something that I can have done?
As long as it's less than 20% of the tree's canopy or less, and I do remember that great big one, and a lot of trees that have that. Yes, that's not a problem, and you could do that. It does not require a formal request.
Thank you. My other question is the rules for mitigation. It says 50%, but I don't know it's 50% of what. I'm only asking so that I understand the rules, should I want to make any other application with mitigation.
You mean an application for another tree to be removed
Yes, sir.
and then to mitigate
With
for it?
mitigation.
Okay, well, the mitigation is based on removal of trees without construction. There is a parameter for X number of inches per acre on a per acre basis, or number of trees per acre. And I don't have that on the top of my head, but has anybody summed up the inches of tree diameter that you have on your property for you yet?
I
Any
have
reason?
not done
And it
that.
Okay,
depends
well,
on whether,
it
I
didn't
can-
necessarily
I can do
required to
math
do that.
here, but
and it depends on whether or not there's a grand tree or not.
Right.
None of ours are grand.
No,
trees.
it'd be 50% of a
Ungrant.
undergrand tree, if you will. That's between 8 and 16 inches. Becca? On this property or no? Oh, I didn't even start yet. I'm probably, were you talking about this property here? Oh, okay. There's a mitigation question, that I can't answer. This is on Caleb Court. There's, Oh.
What's the question about?
I
Oh,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
understand, the standard only says 50%, but I want to know 50% of what? You know,
So you're talking about removal, so removal without construction for trees that are not grand trees, meaning they're under 16 inches in diameter.
okay.
The mitigation requirement is 50% of the caliberage of the tree. So whichever tree we're talking about here, you know, if it's the 14-inch pine, that it would be, I mean, that would be like roughly 3-inch caliber.
Thank you. That was my assumption, but I wanted to know that as a fact. I'm a retired engineer, so I need the numbers.
We respect that.
so what was the sum close to 24 inches?
For the lot, the mitigation requirement.
Well, in the case of not construction, isn't it just 50%
Yeah.
of the tree removed, 50% of the diameter inches of the tree removed?
Right,
These are small.
caveat to that is if you feel, or Nick felt that, the backyard wouldn't support the planting of those young trees, and maybe if, let's say, I don't know what's going on in the front yard, but, if they also wouldn't support, then you're allowed to waive that requirement.
Right.
In the front yard, we have a hectare Japanese maple tree that we planted last year that is supposed to get about 15 feet tall with a canopy of equally about 10 to 15 feet wide. And I hesitate to plant anything else in the front yard because of all the utilities. We did do what they call it here, we call it wish utility up in Maryland. And there's a lot of water and electrical and gas and all.
I know.
All the lines run inside of the sidewalk instead of between the sidewalk and the street, so.
But in the
Planning
backyard,
about one spot.
all the seeds on the back of the perimeter there are, what, blue ice cypress that we've already planted.
We saw that, yeah.
14 of them
In the
there,
drawing.
and we have that oak tree that we got from the neighbor.
The
And then
Schumer
also, last year at this time, around this time, we got the Virginia magnolia trees in town, which I appreciate very much, that we're talking about trees.
Thank you.
And, do we need to plant other things
Well, again, that's
to replace, I guess?
two trees. I just simply like to make a motion that we approve. And I don't know if I'm confused, one or two is the codominant longleaf.
Number one is the codominant.
Okay, I move that we allow removal of trees 1 and 5. And having been in the yard, I move that we additionally waive the requirement for mitigation because there's lots of trees already there.
And as
Wonderful.
Campbell pointed out, we have plenty of azaleas. We already have 5 and 2 more to plant of azaleas underneath all those.
Very good. You happy, Faye?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any more discussion?
Just one question I have, Becca. The houses over there, they've got this strip, like a buffer strip. Is that a restricted area where you can't take down anything? Does the town restrict removal of trees in that area? You know, unless it's a,
If there's wetlands, you can't touch the trees in that area, but I'd have to look at the overall plat.
Mhm.
to tell
Okay.
you For sure what,
Across the street from us is an area that at least the developer presented it to us as a natural area that would remain unbuilt. So as you come in the neighborhood, there were the 5 first houses, and then there's a nice set of stand of trees. That was part of the attraction of that property, is that across the street, we had all those and they do a great job in the summer of blocking the sun until about 10 o'clock, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're there.
I really hope it stays.
Yes, sir. I do.
So we have a second to the motion. Questions answered. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your help.
Commend you for planting the cypress at the back of the lot. That's a nice step.
Well, that is what, Japanese Creek, man, Japanese.
Paul Ferretti, if you've dealt with them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next order of business is 206 West Sixth North Street, I think.
Gotta be 209.
209.
209.
Sorry, I wrote it down wrong.
Do we have a picture?
Good morning.
Do we have a picture of that?
Yeah, you got it right there.
That's good.
There's another one prior to that, I think. A further away shot.
Picture you said?
There's one above it, I believe. It's a little bit more from the distance there. Okay. We've read the letter, Nathaniel, and you make your case as to why you think this tree should be removed. And now I'd like to open up a discussion here. Anyone have thoughts and discussion about this?
Well, I'd like to ask, other than what's in your letter, is there any other reinforcing information that you wanted to share, or does your letter pretty much speak?
I'm pretty sure the letter covered everything that was wrong with the tree, the defects in it.
Okay, I like what you outlined as I've forgotten how you phrased it, but as a tree care plan to prune the tree every 3 to 5 years and to fertilize it. That's good management for any tree. And I would prefer to see that than to remove the tree.
I think you might have misunderstood
Oops.
why I put that in there.
No, I understand that. I think, well, go ahead and tell me why. I think I understood, but.
Well, I think I was showing that, ultimately we could put all that care into that tree and it's still going to be in decline. We're not gonna change the fact that it's already lost its central leader at the top. We're not gonna change the fact that it has a massive co-dominant trunk system on it. We're not gonna change the fact that it's water road. We're not gonna change the fact that it has mistletoe throughout the canopy, which is a parasitic plant. I mean, it just has too many things wrong with it to make it a good candidate for a tree safe plant.
Right.
So a tree safe plant like that is gonna be more costly for the environment than just moving the tree and replacing it with more suitable species.
Right.
That reflects it.
Yeah, well, I gather that, and that's what I thought, but I like the idea of saving the tree and doing what you suggest as opposed to removing it. And doing that, if you buy the tree 10 years, and I think you could buy more, certainly the tree's in decline. But because the tree is in decline, it's not reason to remove it in my mind. The central leader, I think that as you indicate, you could work on that. You could do some pruning, you could remove the mistletoe, and you could fertilize the tree and buy that tree at least 10 years, if not longer. And if the property owner is really interested in the long term, replacing that tree with something, then you'd find a suitable place to put a live oak. And by the time 10, 15, 20 years, when that water oak does succumb and it reaches a point where it has to be removed, then the live oak has got some stature to it. So I would prefer to see that your management plan put into effect and remove the tree.
You're missing the point of why I put that in there.
No, no, I know, I understand completely. I'm saying that,
So scientifically speaking, if we go through all that wasted time, resources of my customers, and we're still in the same situation, I haven't done anything good for the environment. I've done something negative for the environment. My footprint to bring all my equipment out all those times for all those site visits is going to make this tree a negative impact on the environment instead of a positive impact. And our job here is to be a good steward of the environment.
you know,
Even in removing trees. So laying out the case of how many visits that tree would require, it shows that my footprint would be way too heavy to try and save that tree, but I'm not even gonna save it. We're gonna be in the worst situation in 10 years. That's assuming the tree doesn't fail and cause massive damage to the homeowner's property before.
Right.
And that's a big assumption. And that's an assumption that I don't think Mr. Brandenburg is very comfortable. I would be with my tree.
Right.
So my suggestion, my letter doesn't suggest or even recommend a tree safety plan.
I understand. I understand exactly what you're recommending. I do understand exactly what you're recommending. And I think that the tree management plan is a better alternative. Quite frankly, I think that if you didn't do a thing, if you didn't go out there and have a footprint at all, that tree would still be fine for another 10 years. Now, if you could, if you could present to us a study of the trunk and the decay and show us that there is a definite risk, that the risk is so great that the tree should be removed, then we might then I might reconsider. I'm not speaking for the rest of the board, but you know, we haven't done that yet. It doesn't look like. And so at this point in time, I'm opposed to removing the tree. I would rather it stay.
I recognize that you say that the tree is in decline. But I personally am in decline. I'm getting older and I know that my time will come. But does that mean that go ahead and check me off now? No.
But the difference between that is if you break the leg, you don't break another person's property or endanger their family.
Well,
To relate a tree's decline, that is a very large, very heavy, and potentially very dangerous situation to our health as human beings. It doesn't really
yeah, and yet
transfer very well.
it has been there. How many years?
What's that?
How many years has it been there and has not,
Been there, it's probably been 60 years, maybe 80.
and has threatened no one so far? And
It's a threat right now.
I mean, has anyone, have you lost anyone because of it?
So do we want to wait until we lose somebody?
Well,
we deem it a risk?
No, but what I'm trying to say is these 60 years that you're talking about, free.
Not us, certified risk opinion to deem the tree a risk.
Well, if we're going to,
Versus waiting for it to hurt somebody and then saying, oh yeah, that was risk.
are you going, if you're going to have every tree could be a risk, then, so we could chop down all the trees and have nothing more than border grass,
Nothing more than what?
liriope, border grass. If we chop down every tree, it might be a risk.
Not saying business.
Okay, well, we need to find out exactly what it is, and we have insufficient evidence of that right now. We need a resistor graft. You make assumptions about the death of the root system. I saw, but you need to get up and someone needs to get up and look down in the cavity. That's what we want to see.
But you look down that cavity, you see that the tree's already missing a section of its central.
We don't know the reason for it having been moved. Those two codominants look pretty healthy to me for a 60 to 80-year-old water oak, okay? I don't see a lot of hollowing out. I don't see a lot of emptiness. I can't approve removing this tree until we get maybe at least a resistor graph to test the assertion that maybe we have central root rot and central stem rot. And number two, to get a look visibly for some, which is not hard to get up in there, to look at the tree and examine the cavity with documented photographs.
Some of your photos to actually see that.
We were there, we saw what was there.
So why would you even say that the tree doesn't have issues?
It may have some issues, but it not, huh?
Are you sitting here, is the board gonna, or the committee gonna say that this is a healthy tree?
Well, you have,
This tree does
that's,
not have any risk to it.
Nope.
Because if you
there's no
did-
such thing as saying none, and there's no
if
such
you're
thing as
going
having
to
any.
Disagree with me and deny it, that's fine, you just need to make it in writing. And that way, the town will be liable for this trees.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of time, so there's time for you to do a resistor graph and get up on the tree.
I don't need to do a different graph. I'm telling you that this tree is a risk. I'm telling you that the tree does have issues. It is in decline. You've actually just said that the tree is in decline.
So am I.
All trees are.
No, that is not true at all.
Yes, they
That
are.
is not a true statement.
Because they get older.
No.
They do
All
get
trees are
older.
Not in decline.
We are all in decline. Everything is. I realize that.
Is there any more discussion?
What,
Can I get a motion? Is there any more discussion on the board's part?
I don't think that you really have. I just don't see how you're gonna have the legitimate opinion. Say that tree can't be removed.
It can be removed. It may not be removed. It's not like it has to happen tomorrow. I think we need to look at it a little harder. I would like to see some evaluation of either by resistor, well, certainly by resistor graph, as well as visualizing, you know, just how serious the rot is in that tree.
And you said it didn't need a resistor graph. How do you know it doesn't need it?
Just one little slice, so you would have to find the rot throughout that tree, you would have to do a resistor graph every foot.
No,
for
but
the
you're talking
entire
about,
height of the tree.
you're talking about root depth. We could
No,
probably
no,
concentrate on that.
The resistor graph measures the decay within the circle, within the.
I understand.
The slice piece that you're measuring. So in order to determine whether that tree has a rotting section, you would have to do a resistor graph for every foot for the entire height of that tree to find.
No, but you infer that it implies there's root rot, central root rot. Well, we could,
I never said- I
yeah,
never
it's
said that.
right in the letter.
if you decided to do a resistor graph, and I'm not saying that you should, if you decide to do a resistor graph or any sort of resistance testing, then of course you wouldn't want to do every foot, but if you did a couple of places and you could show this board that, yeah, there is significant decay enough to warrant removal of the tree, then we would approve it. The last thing we want to do is not approve something that should be removed. And you could do some root excavation and do some resistance testing just to tell us how much structure seems to be left in the roots and you know, and but I beg to differ. I also am a certified arborist.
If you were to excavate into the root system to find root rot, you would have to break in through healthy root tissue to find the interior rot. Unless it's so decayed and so prevalent that it's already made its way to the outside, because it starts in the center. Root rot starts in the center. Resistor grafts don't even measure root rot. They measure trunk decay. So we're
No.
talking about two completely different things.
Resistor graphs measure decay because you use a resistor graph to measure decay on bridges. Look, I'm not going to argue with you. I also am a certified arborist
It is
and I
hard.
had a tree risk assessment qualification. So I know a little bit about what I'm talking about as well as you do.
Don't in the urban, you've ever been in a tree?
Yeah. Yeah. I worked for 35 years as the arborist for the city of Charleston. So yes, I have been in a tree and yes, I have done all this stuff. Pardon me? So at any rate, Mr. Chair, I move that we disapprove the removal of this tree.
I second it.
Any more discussion? If you're willing to come back with some more substantial evidence, I still think getting in the tree really matters. We're familiar with water oaks. We're familiar with large trees that live a long period of time.
You guys are familiar with water. You guys know that this
Yes,
is
we do.
the tree is in decline. how much more time and energy do you want to waste before a tree is deemed or allowed to be removed? Gonna deny it, please write a letter so that my liability is covered. I've already recommended the tree to be removed because it is a risk. So if you're gonna disagree with me, you need to put it in.
I don't know that that's even a necessary procedure, but we'll find out.
Absolutely necessary. If you're gonna, you are going to disagree. Certified arborist, you need to put it in writing, but I've already put my findings in writing. All right, so I have no desire to be.
So within 5 days of the denial, the tree will receive.
Please put it in writing that the board.
It'll be noted in the minutes.
Disagreeing with my.
And also, it isn't if today is the last day of the rest of our lives. You know, there's time. And it doesn't, this care plan may not even have to be to the extent that you described. That's the maximum potential. The requirement may not be that great. As Danny said before, this thing could live 10 years or more without anything done to it. Yeah, there's some things they could do to help it.
It already has 3 major that are wrong.
Well, maybe we
If it had a
dispute the major.
singular- if there's a singular issue with the tree, it'd be a different story, but there's not just one issue with this tree, there's multiple issues. And when there's multiple issues with the tree, if their strength is lost, their vitality is lost, it's fine. So to say, hey, we want to wait until it actually fails. Just doesn't make sense, because you're endangering people in their property. You don't have the right to endanger people in their property.
That's pushing it a little too far.
It's
We
not-
have a motion
Not pushing. it too
that's
far.
seconded. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
I look forward to the letter. Thank you.
The last item of business is 302 Rutherford Street. Morning.
Morning.
Good, how are you? So thanks for your patience. Been here before.
Once the tree, but VAR. We didn't
Oh,
do that,
okay.
so you guys get to-
We've been to the property before about other, but the prior owner, I believe.
Yes.
You recently bought the property, is that correct? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've looked at the property, we understand, there are issues with the pine tree, structural and issues. I would like to get some discussion about it, but it is marginal to say at least. The other issue, of course, is removing a grand tree for the garage. And, so that's probably the principal area of discussion, so.
We would agree.
Yeah, the pine is not much of our concern. It's just noted when there's owners out there with that.
The veranda that's between our yards, the house to the left, we need to trim it, so. They just haven't mentioned,
Hey, this pine,
did you know the pine all looks damaged?
Right.
We're looking at the.
They were working in the adjacent yard.
Yes, it sits on our property.
I saw it, and it's a
Yeah,
massive tree.
200-year-old
Yeah, oh,
oak, and- Yeah, that honestly has been the main topic of where do we put the garage is, we can't put it to the left of the house because we'll damage the root system, which is another reason we can't even consider a pool on that side. Because of the vastness of the root system.
Right.
So that's, one of the reasons why the magnolia has become.
Right.
We look at the garage.
I had just one question, others did too, is it any possibility that, and I'm sure you've thought of all the options, and I don't know how far back it would go anyhow. We didn't measure it, if the garage had been placed, would be placed where the gates are right now off of Rutherford Street rather than, I forget the name of the other street.
Yeah.
Problem with that is the BAR wants the garage to be a subordinate structure to the home, and so from front facing Rutherford, they do not want to see the garage. So we had to shrink the footprint of the house, or actually the garage a couple of times. To not only make it shorter than the house, but also make it the same width of the home, so that way it could sit behind with access from South Kenton.
Oh, so it was wider than the house.
It was originally,
Yeah,
yes.
it was wider.
Oh.
was much larger, not much larger than the home, but the garage footprint was much larger to begin with. And after multiple meetings, we came up with this solution of making it subordinate to the main structure of the property.
They also wouldn't be able to meet the tree protection requirements if the garage were for the oak.
Right.
It would.
Okay, that's the other thing. we didn't tape that out. I didn't know how close it would get.
There's no way.
Okay.
I mean, with getting materials back in there, because either they have to come in from Southampton or Rutherford, and I mean, either way, you're accessing the lot, you would be in.
Okay. Okay, well, we didn't measure that, but it was just a thought.
Sure, no, honestly.
You've been through that.
To protect the oak because it is such a beautiful tree.
Yeah.
And so we're
Mhm.
trying to work with our neighbor to turn it back on the stuff that do need to be
Okay.
fixed. So.
Right. Any other discussion thoughts?
I think we also brought up mitigation, for the magnolia, if it were to come down, maybe planting some additional trees in the yard.
We're gonna
Canopy
work
trees.
on that.
Canopy trees.
Yeah, that would be fine. We have a spot on the corner of Hampton and Rutherford waiting for a tree. We have not committed to what type of tree. So yeah, we are willing, and that whole flower bed has been added in. I mean, we've done a lot of landscaping in a year and we're willing to do way more. We just have to get a garage in before we can do all of it.
Right.
So. But yes, we do have to plant additional trees. So it's fine.
Would you be willing to plant? Now, there's rules of mitigation, and I don't know the specifics of your lot with respect to the number of diameter inches that remain to satisfy the town requirement, which is X number of inches or X number of trees per acre. But what we would do is if there was a need to compensate and have a canopy tree installed, that would be one of oaks, hickory, something like that. I know you mentioned doing a loquat, but that wouldn't constitute a canopy tree.
Right.
But if you were willing to compensate with a canopy tree, to mitigate with a canopy tree, I don't think anybody would have a difficulty with that.
Yeah, no, there's still plenty of area.
I know there's, because most stuff got taken out that was there before you owned it, big stuff.
Well, we've lost unfortunately two of the oaks. One, we had a split and it fell across the street during a microburst on the street. Then we had another one top at 15 feet from the top of the canopy. So we've had to take two trees out already. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we are looking to continue to put more in, just a time of when.
Okay.
So it would be a condition of your CO for this garage. Okay. So before you could get your final inspection passed for the garage, we would come out, either Nick or myself would come out and ensure that you are meeting mitigation requirements. For this lot, it's 0.25 acres. So 106 inches, which is the mitigation requirement. Acre. So total would be 40 inches. So if they already have 40 inches on the lot, they are not required to mitigate.
Right.
So we would need to come out and just figure out, because I know some of those trees are in the right way and they're not technically on your property, so those would not count. So we can sometime this week come out, assess that and give you the mitigation requirements, and then it'll be attached as a condition. Garage.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Can I have a,
Well, I just have a question. I'm trying to understand the mitigation requirements. If,
This is removal for construction.
right, no, I'm thinking inches. Can we, there's really not much real room for more than like 2 canopy trees on that property. And so can we specify then 2 canopy trees? And if after your calculations, after you've looked at it, there's room for one, change it, then change this board's decision then, or what happens?
as my.
Oh, so you would decide the number of trees to be
No,
planted?
You guys decide on mitigation. It would pop up on my screen.
Like if they're meeting those 40 inches, y'all can't require them.
Right, okay,
So it's really just based off of what they have.
right. Well, let's say they're meeting 35 of the inches. Then, and we specified 2 trees and there's not, and there's not enough. Well, anyway, if we specify 2 trees, you all can change it to meet the criteria if need be.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know, that you can make the right decision after the fact.
I think there should be more than 2 planted on the lot.
Okay,
That is your recommendation. to
Okay.
staff. There is that caveat that we can say, all right, the 2 trees or 3 trees would survive successfully on the lot. So you always have to do 2.
okay, good. That's what I need. Thank you.
So if that's your suggestion, then
Yeah, that,
denote it.
But it also sounds like you want to put nice big tree in there anyhow. So we hate to talk about regulations and all that, if, you know, you seem to be willing to do this anyhow, but this is what we have to do. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, so I move to approve the removal of the magnolia, provided that the appropriate mitigation is done, aiming towards 2 canopy trees on the lot.
I'll second it. Any more discussion?
Yeah, Claude, the minimum, on the replacement trees or the mitigation trees, is it 2.5 inches caliper or is it 3? Or is there 3? Okay, good. I think the bigger the better.
I wasn't even aware that the access to the garage was to come from Hampton. I thought it was gonna be from Rutherford.
Oh,
no.
Yeah, I see that now, but I didn't know it then.
So you had to get another curb cut and everything. I heard that. Okay, we have a motion seconded. No more discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. You have your garage and we'll see how it works out with the city. Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
All right,
All right,
take care.
y'all have a nice day.
Are there any other items to discuss, mention, thoughts, questions? Any thoughts or reservations about the eventual dying of a tree, and when does that happen? And we had a difficult one today. And it's trying, but I think it didn't have to have the urgency that was presented to us. That's why I chose to move the way I did.
You know, that if Faye said it correctly, if you remove any tree that has issues, then there are simply no trees. And this tree, based upon my experience, and I have some experience with water oaks, is in such a state that removal is just not required unless the arborist can go find something that we could not see. And you know, by saying the root rot is extensive, I mean, because he indicated that the dead central leader was a result of root rot. That is, A, that's not necessarily not the case. And B, if it is, I would want to, before I would remove the tree, if it were my tree, I would want to know the extent of the root rot to make sure that it is indeed a problem. And just, there was not enough evidence shown to want the removal of that tree, just simply, just not there.
And he was saying that this testing that we were recommending that you for root, rot, was not necessary. And that's just,
Well,
More-
and it may not be, if you can uncover it, you can say, oh, these,
But
you know,
when-
all 12 of these routes are rotten, maybe it's not, but he didn't do that. He didn't
But
he didn't, hadn't done enough work.
anytime we can have more information,
Right.
it's good.
Right.
It helps us make a decision and based on what we have.
That's right.
And we did make a decision based on what we have.
That's right. That's right. And we made the right decision in my mind. I mean, I take that to the bank.
I mean, they certainly have the ability to go back and do the resistograph and some other things, look in the crown. I don't know if he actually got up in the top of that tree and looked down into the trunk, but,
I'm not that tall.
Necessary, because he knew all. He had X-ray vision.
Right.
So, no, he didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to get that and kick it around a little bit.
No, I just,
Nick, you got anything you want to add to what we've talked about?
I may have some things after the meeting. that I'd like to talk to you guys about, or maybe not for right now.
All right, then, with no more discussion, do I have a motion?
move to adjourn.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn. First time I've used that.